Hello and welcome to this week's myNewsWrap, news from the world of SAP, Microsoft and the world in between. Currently, I think we all agreed that we are facing super mad times and I thought a bit about if I should do this session or not, or if there should be some period where I do not do that, and I decided to do it no matter how mad the times are at the moment. Hoping to give you a bit of distraction, a bit of news around the tech world, and getting rid of the insanity out there. Having said that, within the show notes, I have referenced, because that might be of interest for some of you, the responses of the big tech companies that came out this week as response to the war in Ukraine. By SAP, by Microsoft, as well as by GitHub. So if you're interested in that, that's in the show notes. And with that long introduction, I will now switch back to the original focus area of myNewsWrap, technology of SAP and Microsoft. With that, let's switch to, first of all, the world of SAP. As I announced last week, the SAP BTP Kyma runtime got an update, or is getting an update. It's rolled out in iterations, so that the service that you have on BTP is then based on the open source version 2 of Kyma. And with that, there are quite some news that came out. Some news have been described in blog posts last week. And this week, there is another bunch of news that I would like to present you. First of all, an update on how to put your custom domain into Issue Service Mesh in order to seamlessly connect your website or microservice with the Issue Service Mesh. Then another blog post by Gaurav around what's new in the application connectivity area with the SAP BTP runtime. So what's the update there? Then how to access the built-in observability tools in the Kyma runtime, because that's a bit tricky, and Jamie got you covered and guides you through that. And last but not least, one blog post by Piotr Tesny around what's new in the BTP Kyma runtime with respect to security. So what changes have happened due to RBAC, the OIDC topic, DAX that has been deprecated with Kyma 2.0. So, or with this update within the SAP BTP runtime. And this blog post kind of guides you through what you have to think about. Then some news from the broader SAP ecosystem. First of all, I would like to bring your attention to a video playlist that was recorded by Holger Müller, from Constellation Research. Together with Thomas Saueressig, member of the board of SAP, around cloud and SAP. So starting with what is cloud all about and ending up what's coming next in the cloud at SAP. So it's a 5-part video series talking about that. So enjoy that one. Quite some nice insights. It's a 5-part series, so I think it's complete by now. And then another project that I would like to bring to your attention that was done by students of Professor Christian Brum, who always pushes forward projects combining different SAP areas, getting students' hands dirty with latest technologies. And there is a blog post series around the project that has been pushed out there by his students. The scenario is about project order and confirmation integration. Starting with, there is some overview here in the main blog post that I've referenced in the show notes about the process. So you have a new production order in S/4HANA, which gets then transferred to a tool called OEE AI, which is also described there, and then triggers an integration flow in the CPI area. And that's, I think, also done with CAP, and then confirms the production order. So there is one blog post with an overview there is one blog post around the integration of S4 and the external manufacturing intelligence platform, which is this OEE AI thingy. And then there is one blog post around the development of the CAP application, which integrates with the integration suite via MQTT. This last blog post is also accompanied by a video on YouTube, which also guides you through that topic. So that's, I think, really cool stuff, and great to see that happen and getting some, let's say, fresh young blood into the SAP area. With that, I would like to switch to the Microsoft part of the house, starting, of course, with Serverless and Azure Functions. And there is a two-part blog post series that I would like to highlight around publishing OpenAPI documents from Azure Functions to Azure API management using a CI/CD pipeline. It's a two-part blog post. First of all, about generating the OpenAPI documents from Azure Functions. And then the second part is about publishing them to the API management using CI/CD pipeline. So that's, I think, a really interesting scenario, and that's kind of also closing some gaps, because it's great to have OpenAPI documents for your Azure Functions, but where do you expose them naturally? Of course, in the API management. And it would, of course, also be great to have that automated, and those two blog posts get you covered on that topic. And then a second small announcement from the area of Azure Static Web Apps. You have now the option, and that's GA now, to specify your API language runtime in the Azure Static Web App configuration, which is the static web app config.json file, staticwebapp.config.json file, where you can now, besides specifying authentication, routing, and so on, also specify the API runtime. I have referenced the announcement within the show notes. Then from pure serverless to containers, starting first with the serverless containers, Azure Container Apps. And there is another cool blog post by Bill Belida around building and deploying container images to Azure Container Apps, making use of GitHub Actions. So the flow is basically to have GitHub Actions to publish your images to the Azure Container Registry, and then from there kick off the Azure Container Apps. This blog post guides you exactly through that flow. Then around the area of Kubernetes, there was also a highlight this week from my perspective. There was a talk by Nico Meisenzahl from White Duck at the Azure Dev Meetup Munich that took place on site for a long time, for the first time in Munich. But it was also live streamed, and it's about hijacking a Kubernetes cluster. So Nico walks you through on how to do, hijacking the Kubernetes cluster, and what are basically the things that you have to wrap your head around when it comes to security and securing your Kubernetes cluster. Then I have some news from the ecosystem around Kubernetes. First of all, Knative, that has decided to, or has applied for membership at CNCF, so at the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, is now accepted as a CNCF incubating project. So that happened this week. So Knative is now under the umbrella of governance of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, which is great. Then also one announcement that is, I think, quite fresh around feature flag management. And there is now a project called Open Feature, which will provide or aims to provide an open standard for feature flag management in order to give developers a great experience around how to access feature flags, how to use them via unified APIs and unified SDKs. So interesting to see how this moves forward. And then last but not least, a blog post around Dapper, how to use Dapper on, let's say, a stack that is not, at least from my experience, not very common. But of course, worth taking a look at. So this blog post describes you how to deploy Dapper on the Oracle Cloud infrastructure and on top there on the Oracle Kubernetes engine that is deployed on the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So that's quite interesting. First of all, if you use that stack, but also if you might use a stack that's not perfectly described within the Dapper documentation, then maybe this also gives you some hints and ideas what to wrap your head around. With that, let's switch to the area of DevOps. There is not too much news around GitHub this week, to be honest. There is basically just one report that came out about the availability of GitHub in February. This comes out every month and tells you about issues that or problems that GitHub has faced, which impacted the availability of GitHub. And there was one in February that lasted 13 minutes. And this blog post describes you what happened, why it happened, and gives you some further links if you want to investigate more. And then one small feature update interesting for enterprise accounts. If you are an enterprise owner or billing administrator, you can now add, edit, and remove. So basically do any reasonable action around billing emails within your enterprise account. So you can now really freely decide where your billings emails will be sent to. And then another cool blog post that I really like by Lars Klint around comparing Azure DevOps and GitHub. Because both tools have, of course, target exactly the same spot, but also have functional-wise a quite big overlap. And this blog post kind of shows you the details around what's different and maybe what one competitor does better than the other. So very interesting blog post. I like that one. And then from the broader Microsoft ecosystem, also one blog post that I would like to bring to your attention by Kai Walter, which is talking about how to use the Azure Application Gateway private link and how to configure it in order to make use of the Azure API management for internal use cases. So that's kind of something that is typical for enterprises to have for internal development, also an API management, which defines which API you can use. And the setup with VPNs and private link, well, it's cumbersome as usual with virtual networks. And Kai Walter guides you through on how to do that and how to achieve this setup. Yeah, with that, I'm already at the world of SAP and Microsoft, so the world in between. And of course, as every week, there is a new edition of the SAP on Azure video podcast. This week, focusing on an interesting topic because it's kind of, I wouldn't call it weird, but it's quite a challenge, I would say. It's about migrating a 100 plus terabyte SAP system. So an SAP system with more than 100 terabyte of data in it to Azure. That's, I would guess, really a challenge. And this video tells you how they did that. Then there is another blog post by Martin Pankratz. This time not about private link, but about CPI and iFlows. And how to make them more resilient or to be noticed when there is a faulty CPI iFlow. So this blog post is connected to other blog posts that Martin brought out around making your CPI more resilient, using high availability and monitoring your state. So this blog post kind of gives you the description on how to combine the CPI and the iFlow state REST API with logic apps and then informing you on Teams or Outlook or whatsoever. I mean, there are tons of connectors within logic apps. If there is something faulty in there, if there is an iFlow that is stuck or is kind of not starting or is stuck in a process that it should not be. I really like that approach, because I really like the combination of ops tasks together with the power of logic apps, to be honest. So that's a really cool example on that one. And then there is a short video that Holger Bruchel brought out around the Power Platform, namely Power Automate and Power Apps, and how to combine them with SAP systems, making use of the ERP connector. So also a short video, quite nice introduction on that topic. Yeah, and with that, I'm already at the area of learning and events. There is one blog post by Edidion Asikpo, I hope I pronounced it correctly, around the CKAD certification, not configuration, namely the Certified Kubernetes Application Developer certification. I've referenced, I think, a tweet series that she brought out on how to get prepared for that. And that kind of referenced also blog posts. And this is another one by her around the Kubernetes architecture explained. So it's really diving into the depth of Kubernetes around all the things that happen in the architecture, or that make up the architecture of a Kubernetes cluster and of Kubernetes, with the API server, with etcd, and so on and so forth. So that's really cool stuff. And then there was another talk this week in the InnoQ Technology Lunch, which usually happens on Wednesday at lunchtime, by Stefan Tilkov around the topic why API first might not be a good idea. So quite catchy title. And quite interesting insights by Stefan why API first might not be super perfect in every case. And then 2 announcements about upcoming events. First of all, by the Azure Meetup Bonn, there is a virtual, so to say, an online event that happens this week on Thursday, March the 10th. Around serverless Kubernetes with Azure Container Apps by Thorsten Hans. So I'm really looking forward to that one. And as it's a virtual online event, so I can also attend it, although it's in Bonn. I really like that. And I hope that this hybrid setup that was also done by the Dev Meetup in Munich will last for some time. And then last but not least, this week there was the announcement that the one and only community conference around CUP is happening again this year. ReCup is taking place on June the 1st and June the 2nd in 2022. And this time it will be a hybrid event. So it will take place, of course, online, and it will take place in Rot. So mark the date if you're interested in that topic. And with that, yeah, I'm already at the end of today's session. I hope I had some interesting news for you, some distracting news for you, some stuff that you would like to follow up this weekend, next week. And with that, I wish you a nice Saturday, a great Sunday, and a successful and happy next week. See you again next Saturday. Until then, bye.